It's our Steelers Hall of Honor segment where we've been privileged to have conversations with some of the all-time Steeler greats like Donnie Shell and Mel Blount and Jack Ham, Dermontti Dawson, and certainly in that category, right at the very top, is our next guest, Rod Woodson, who, of course, was drafted by the Steelers in 1987 and was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2009. Rod, great to have you on. Good to talk to you again. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's really been a thrill every Wednesday. We do this. Did I mention Mel Blount? Did I mention Mel?
No, I didn't hear Mel, but he's there. We know that. Everybody knows that.
He was on. Franco was on. So we're running the gamut here. But by the way, belated happy birthday! Your birthday a few weeks ago. I won't tell him how old you are. The fact that you know it and feel it, that's more than enough. I speak from experience.
I absolutely agree with you. I appreciate that.
Okay, what are you working on now, Rod?
I work at the NFL Network, and I also work with that new league, the Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
I do studio work for them. That's a spring league that just started. In February. So doing that is fun. Still living in California with the family, enjoying it all.
Good for you. How is the Alliance League going? I mean, I watched some of it the very first week. Job responsibilities kind of kept me from watching any more. Is it gaining some traction as you see it?
Well, I think it is. I think it's good football. Coaches always sit there and say they need to get their backup players ready to play when they don't get any practice time. That's hard to do. So, it's kind of like, just having players get that game day experience. Hopefully, you look at the NFL. The NFL is the only major sport that doesn't have a feeder league, basically.
Right.
Doesn't have a minor league. I know they've tried to do it in the past, NFL Europe, when they allocated players to NFL Europe. I would hope it would go somewhere like that in the next couple of years where teams would allocate so many players to get some game day experience because they think that's what they need. I think it's going well. It's really good football. I think some of the rules are tremendous. We saw that I think the impact of some of the rules that they already had in place at the Alliance, the NFL took into play this year, especially the onside kick rule. They put that into play this past year with the Alliance. So, I think not only could it be a feeder league, but it could be a league that if they're thinking about changing rules, they can implement it in there, see how it works out. If they like it, they can move forward. If they don't, they kind of put it in the junkyard.
Yeah, absolutely. They do with minor league baseball before they implement it in the major leagues. Do you see it developing into, let's use this as an example, maybe not the minor league system like in baseball, which is pretty expansive with all the different levels, but the NBA D-League? I mean, do you see it becoming that?
I hope it does because I think players need it. A lot of players coaching for the last 4 years. I realize, players come out early. Every player that comes out is not ready to play football in the National Football League. They might be skillful. They might have some skills, but sometimes they're just not ready to play. They don't have the fundamentals down. I think playing in those type of games on a having 10 games under your belt where you're starting or playing a vast amount of time, you hone your skills that way. It's hard to hone your skills in practice all the time, and then if you never get to apply it back on game day, you never know what you're going to be. And some players are, practice players. Some players just wait for the lights to come on, and they're playmakers. So I would hope that it does because I think the NFL needs something like that because I think there's a lot of players in the league that are just lacking the fundamentals when they first come in.
Well, that kind of answers the question I'm about to ask. Currently, are there any players in the Alliance League who are also under contract to an NFL team and I suppose they could go to an NFL camp this July, right?
Well, they can go. They can't be under contract with both.
Okay.
So, if the one league that the Alliance will allow any player to get out of their contract, and everybody does a 3-year deal, is the National Football League. I mean, that's everybody's hope and dream to play in the National Football League. But they can't be under contract in the NFL and with the Alliance, not unless another year comes down the road and teams start allocating players to the Alliance in their regions, and very similar to what they did, at the NFL Europe side of it. So, like I said, I hope it. I think it will stick. I hope it sticks. I think the NFL needs it. Not only for that, but they also need it for the backup quarterback, which is the most important position in all of sports nowadays. That your backup quarterbacks, you have no idea what they're going to do when they get in game day, and you can at least give them some game day experience by putting them in the Alliance. So, I think it's a critical piece to maintaining and maybe even progressing to getting good backup players in the National Football League.
Outstanding. Rod Woodson's our guest. Of course, he is a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Voted to the all-time NFL team, and obviously is in the Steelers Hall of Honor. That's what we do here. We talk about potential nominees. We're going to ask Rod about that just momentarily. Rod, I ask a trivia question 3 times a week, and today's question was about your draft. You were the 10th overall pick. I'll ask you the same question. Do you remember who the first player taken in your draft was?
I think it was Vinny Testaverde.
It was. You don't win anything. We already gave the prize away. Sorry about that. But that's exactly who it was. Although you are the only Hall of Famer in that first-round class as a 10th overall selection. And I wanted to have you reminisce on that day when you were drafted out of Purdue. Chuck Noll, as you know, you played for him, and I was around him for a long time. You didn't always see a lot of emotion on him, but when he was asked about drafting Rod Woodson, the question was, do you like him? And he said, like him, I love him. He didn't say that very often.
Well, I'm honored because he's played, he's coached a lot of great players, a lot of Hall of Famers. The one thing I didn't know anything really about Pittsburgh because I didn't really talk to the Steelers. After I got there, Tony said we didn't even really do a lot of research on you, just for the fact that we didn't think you would be on the board at 10. But I know this. I learned a lot from Chuck. I know it was his last 5 years in coaching. After I think he was 23 or some odd years he coached.
23.
I just know that, the way he looked at the game, kind of a father figure, he wanted his players to be good men on the field, great players on the field, but good men off the field and in the community. So, I learned a lot under Chuck, and wouldn't take anything from it. Away from it. A great man, a great coach, one of the best coaches to ever coach in the National Football League.
I know you get asked this, question a great deal, but I'm wondering, and you went into the Hall of Fame as a Steeler, do you still, despite the fact you played in other areas, consider yourself a Steeler?
Oh, yeah. I consider I'm a mutt in life. I'm biracial in life. I'm biracial in football, but I have a fondness, a great fondness for the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Rooney family and the Steel City. Everything about Pittsburgh. Personally, for me, if I wanted to move back to Pittsburgh. My wife didn't want to move back to the cold weather, or we'd still be living in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
if my wife listened to me, but she doesn't listen to me.
That's kind of the way it is. I don't.
It's happy wife, happy life, right?
There you go. Exactly. You're also one of the players who played for both Chuck and for Bill Cowher. Is there a compare and a contrast between those two?
Well, I was with Chuck at the end, and I was with Bill at the beginning. Bill was a fiery, in your face. We called him the chin because he would get right into you with his chin, and he would kind of chew you out, but he would praise you also. I think it was a different style because Chuck would always talk about, especially in the off season, that we had to get on with our life's work sooner or later. Bill, when he first comes in, he's football. And I think there's the difference. I think at the end of his career, talking to a lot of those players who played with him, he kind of morphed into being more of a father figure. kind of like Chuck. So, two great coaches I played for. Not only that, though, but all the other great coaches I had when I was in Pittsburgh. You got to remember, I had, Tony Dungy. He was our defensive coordinator. Tony leaves, and Rod Ruff comes in.
Yep.
Rod Ruff leaves, and then Bill Cowher comes in, but he comes in with Dom Capers and Dick LeBeau. Just staples of great coaches that came through in my 10 years of being in Pittsburgh. And, I give a lot of credit of all the success I had on the field to all those coaches who combined together to give me a lot of knowledge about the game.
Rod Woodson is our guest. Rod, of course, played for the Steelers all those years and then played in San Francisco, Baltimore, and Oakland. The Hall of Honor, I've asked all of our guests. You guys are all in Canton, with the exception of Donnie. And Donnie and L.C. Greenwood were inducted with the first class of the Hall of Honor. And I'm a member of the selection committee, and our thought was, we thought both of those guys should have been in Canton. If you're in Canton, you're automatically in the Steelers Hall of Honor. But your thoughts as a guy who has that connection to Pittsburgh, Rod, about the players who are not in Canton, who may not make it, but were significant contributors to the Steeler organization and, guys that you played with as well.
Well, the guys I played with, I played with Donnie. Donnie was my roommate my rookie year, which was great because he taught me how to be a pro on the field and off the field the night before the games. But also, I look at it and I think about, Carnell Lake, who Carnell was just a baller. I think, he played at a level. Not only was he outside linebacker at UCLA and then moved to safety, but then he played safety, played dime, he played corner, he played free safety. The guy played every position, and he played it extremely well. A very knowledgeable guy about the game. I think he's deserving. I know a lot of other safeties are being talked about going into the Hall. I think Carnell should be right up there with those guys. Greg Lloyd, who I played with, who was dominant for so long. He's one of those guys that he lived his motto that he wore on his shirt, that is where it said, "I'm not paid for my disposition." He played that way. He played to serve fear into opposing quarterbacks and running backs and receivers, and he did a great job at it.
Do you see any parallels between Greg Lloyd and James Harrison, the way he played and his demeanor?
Very similar. I think they're very similar. Greg was a little taller, a little more wiry, a little longer. But the demeanor itself was about the same. They're trying to oppose their will on the game, on receivers, on running backs, on offensive linemen, or trying to get in the head of quarterbacks. That's a really good comparison.
It's interesting. Another comparison that goes along with that, Rod, is the fact that both of them, they were great pass rushers, but they also had a complementary linebacker on the other side. In Lloyd's case, it was Kevin Green. For an early portion, for James Harrison, it was Lamar Woodley, who was very good in a short period of time here. So, one hand washes the other.
It really does. If you're running a 3-4, you better have good linebackers. If you don't have good linebackers in a 3-4, you're going to be in trouble. But anytime you see one out, especially in a 3-4, you see an outside linebacker playing really good. His counterpart normally on the other side is a pretty solid player. Willie, and I'm not saying Willie is just a solid player. I thought Willie played at a very high level.
Mm-hmm.
But with Greg, he had Kevin Green, but he also had some inside presence. He played with David Little. He played with Hardy Nickerson. He played with Chad Brown. So, the one thing throughout our time, of at least me being there in Pittsburgh, is that not only did we have great outside linebacker play, but we had great interior linebacker play that helped those guys get some one-on-ones on the outside.
And great defensive backfield play as well. I'll throw that in there. One last thing for you, Rod. Since you closed your career with the Raiders, and the Steelers have had a connection with the Raiders this offseason, not one they wanted. That's the way it worked out. Is there a different culture among Raider fans. We see them dressed up in the stands, and listen, we're not exactly 65,000 angels at Heinz Field either. But is this a different culture, a different attitude? It feels that way.
Well, it's they two different regions. I think the Steeler fans are blue collar, hard hat wearing type of fans. They're very similar to the team and to the environment that they grew up in. Being steel mills back in the day. That's what the Steelers are made of. That's their chemical makeup.
DNA.
Yeah, their DNA. And I look at, when you look at the Raiders, it's a little different, on the West Coast. They're just as fanatical about their teams. They show it differently. The one thing that I like to say is I bleed black and gold. But I like silver and black because I was in silver and black when I was 9 years old, and I played for the Power Raiders when I was a kid. So it's the one thing I love about it is that, not only having my opportunities to play for, I think, the best sporting organization in all of sports, the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I got to do kind of a bucket list wish for me to play for a team that I grew up playing for when I was a little kid. So, that was my check mark for the Raiders. When it's all said and done, wearing the gold and black throughout my whole life. So when I was in high school, my high school team was black and gold. My college team was black and gold. And my first NFL team I played for 10 years was black and gold. So my favorite colors are black and gold. I have a lot of things that are black. I have a lot of things that are gold. My kids, some of my daughters' favorite colors are black and gold. That's all they wear out here. So, we represent the Steeler Nation in California quite well.
Oh, that's great to hear. It really is. Rod, it was great catching up with you. It's very nice of you to take the time and as we continue with our Steeler Hall of Honor series. Thank you. Be watching for you on the NFL Network. Continued success.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, you're very welcome. Thank you very much. That is Rod Woodson, one of the all-time greats, not just in Pittsburgh, but everywhere in the NFL.